and welcome to today's episode of Piano TV. We are going to talk about the Royal Conservatory of Music, the RCM, which is the major independent school of music in Canada and the United States. So this is basically like the school where you go through your grades. So if you've ever heard someone say, I have my grade 6 in piano or whatever, then this is probably what they're talking about. Or they're talking about the ABRSM, but we'll get to that in a minute. So first off, let's talk some basic details about the Royal Conservatory of Music, which I will now refer to as the RCM because it's much less of a mouthful. So anyway, who are they? How did they get started? All of that stuff. It's actually one of the oldest music schools in the world that still exists today. It was founded in 1886, which incidentally is 100 years before I was born, which is something I'm going to take as auspicious. And it was originally called the Toronto Conservatory of Music. To my knowledge, RCM exams can be taken in Canada and the United States. I don't believe there are examination centers in other countries, but please do correct me if I'm wrong. But I couldn't find any information about that online, so I assume it's just these two. So unfortunately, this makes the Royal Conservatory of Music the most limited in scope of some of the major worldwide music schools, like the ABRSM, except there's like the Australian Music Examinations Board, and they're located only in Australia. So those are the more regional specific ones, which is kind of too bad because the RCM is the one I'm the most familiar with of the bunch, and I talk about it a lot. So sorry if I'm leaving some of you out. If you are a Canadian music student, there is a super strong chance that you are going to be taught via the RCM. So from what I've heard from Americans, it's a little more mixed. It doesn't seem like the majority of teachers operate with the RCM there, but some do. And I mean, you can definitely still do exams and still be instructed via the RCM in the United States. It just seems to be less of like the main thing than it is for Canada. So what you see on the screen here is what I would consider to be the main independent music schools around the globe. So you have the RCM, which is the subject of today's video, and then you have two UK-based music schools, the ABRSM, what does that stand for? Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music, and that's based out of the UK, and so is Trinity College, which is based in London. And both of those are worldwide examination centers. Many, many countries offer both teachers who teach these schools and also examination centers where you can be tested in these schools. And then there's the AMEB, the Australian Music Examinations Board. So a question that people wonder a lot is, how does getting your grades through an institution like the RCM differ from getting like a bachelor's degree at a university or going to a musical college? Well, for starters, if you're gonna go to university and you want to take a music program, you're going to have to do an audition and an exam. So I'm not sure about like other places, but I know here in Canada, you have to, for most university music programs, you have to be able to play at a grade 8 level and like through an audition, and you need to be able to do an exam at that level as well. So if you already have done your RCM grade 8 and you've done the RCM exams and everything, then it A, looks really good on your application, and B, kind of sets you up so you can audition more easily. So that's with universities. If you're trying to get into like a specific music college, it's going to be a lot more stringent. So for example, if you wanted to get into the Glenn Gould School of Music, which is based in Toronto, you would probably want to audition at probably an ARCT level, which is basically the highest Royal Conservatory level, the kind of a minimum, a grade 10 level, but probably ARCT. So basically you can think of schools like the RCM as running parallel to regular schools. So at a regular school, you go to school from like kindergarten to grade 12. Sometimes there's grade 13s and sometimes they're not kindergarten, but that's like the general standard. While you do that, you can take your piano grades kind of concurrently, so that when you're finished high school, you have like at a minimum your grade 8 RCM, so that opens up post-secondary doors to you. And at a maximum, you would have like an ARCT in piano performance, which would open up music college doors for you. But like I say this all in the context of being a kid going through the school system. And that's true for a lot of people, but I'm just saying that to illustrate the point that that's kind of how they work. They're not a substitute for university, but rather they kind of run parallel to whatever education path you're taking. So even if you're an adult and you're long past being done school is even if you're like 90 years old, you can still do the grades and go through the grades. So from a playing perspective, having your ARCT through the RCM would be similar to the skills you would develop getting your bachelor's degree in music. They're kind of equivalent. I mean, having a bachelor's degree will open up more career opportunities if that's like something you care about, but the effect of the skills you develop is the same. So the highest level of the RCM, the licentiate program, is sort of like the equivalent of a master's degree. So for example, if you want to do something like what I do and teach people music, then having a bachelor's of music, a bachelor's degree isn't required, but it's good. It's helpful. I don't have one. I have my grade 10 in music right now, and I do have some teaching certificates as well. So that's what I do, but they do work really well together. So yeah, so they're like, basically just think of them as like parallel courses with a lot of overlap, but both are good in their own right and both work together really well. So I'm not 100% sure if this applies to the USA, but I know that in Canada, doing your RCM exams is awesome if you want a high school credit for it. So if you're a high school student, because getting your RCM grade 6 and the equivalent theory exam gives you a credit for grade 10 high school, and then so on with grade 7, grade 11, grade 8, grade 12. You get like an actual high school credit, which is great for your applications to university. So now that we've established a lot of the basics of RCM exams, where they can be taken, how they match up to universities, and the benefits of the exams from a career standpoint, I want to talk about what the curriculum actually is. And these are just the grades people always refer to. So if someone's like, oh, I have my grade 6, they're probably referring to this. So the RCM, the main bulk of it, the grades go from 1 to 10, but there are levels before and after that. So before grade 1, there is something called preparatory level, which it's basically musical kindergarten. And then after grade 10, you have like the university level courses, which is the ARCT, which is kind of like a bachelor's almost. And then the LRCM, which is like a master's. So the average student in my studio, so this is the student who works like really hard, but their life is not all music. They do other things. They can expect to get to a grade 8 level by the time they're finishing up high school. And someone who reaches this level will be able to enjoy music for life, even if they're not like studying music in college, whatever. But then we have the competitive student. This is the one who practices all the time and they really focus on music in lieu of other activities. Like this is their thing. And those kinds of students can hit a grade 10 level, even ARCT level by the end of high school. And these are the kind of kids who are interested in doing music on a post-secondary level, who, dream of having concert careers and so on. I don't know that I've personally met anyone with an LRCM in music. Like maybe there was 1 or 2 teachers in Toronto. So I assume like getting to this point is like a really rare level of achievement, but it's still there and it's good to know that it's there. So what if you're not a kid? We kind of talked about this earlier, but even if you're an adult, you can still take the grade levels. And a little secret I'll let you in on is that you don't have to take every single level. You can skip grades. It's allowed. It's not like this illegal thing. So sometimes when I have adult learners or people who like have some skills but are interested in getting into the grades, we might start at say like a grade 3 level or jump in at a grade 5 level. And maybe we'll do every single grade or maybe we'll skip some grades. But you can totally do that based on where you're at. It's not like you have to start from the bottom rung if you're already a pretty good piano player. The thing I will say is that basically from a grade 8 level on, you have to do every exam. You can't skip grade 9. You can't skip grade 10, but the earlier grades, you can kind of jump around a little bit. One question I get asked a lot is, how do I know what grade level I'm at? And there's not really any hard and fast rules that I know of, but I try to assess this based on the following factors. So first of all, and most importantly, what pieces can you learn comfortably? This would be anything that you can learn in 2 weeks to a month with relative ease, like, not practicing it for 3 hours a day, kind of just like a more regular level. And this kind of changes the higher levels you get. Like if you're like a grade 9 level student, 2 to 4 weeks isn't going to be really realistic, but you should still have an idea of what you can learn within a shorter time frame that isn't really stretching you too much. It's doable. Okay, so then I want you to think about what pieces do I find difficult, but they're still doable. Okay, these are your stretch pieces, and they usually take at least several months to be able to learn well, and they take a lot more work than what you can do comfortably. The next point is what kinds of pieces are too intense for me. These are a level or two beyond the stretch piece. So if you attempted to learn one of these, you would probably get really frustrated and make really little progress. And then finally, where's your sight reading at? You might be able to play at a level a lot higher than you can read. So you might be able to play these fancy things, but your reading is brutal. And if this is the case, I would probably knock you down a grade or two so that you can get better at reading, which will then allow you to advance more easily. Okay, so what's the most important here when figuring out your grade level? Well, I think it's the first one. I generally consider the first one someone's grade level. If you are playing grade 6 pieces comfortably, I would consider you a grade 6 level. That is not to say that you cannot do more difficult pieces. So using grade 6 as an example, then maybe you've noticed that you've learned a grade 7 or a grade 8 piece, like over here. And they were quite a bit more challenging, but you were still able to do them pretty well. And maybe you did like a grade 8 or 9 piece that was just too tough. And that's kind of what you're looking at over here. So if I saw, okay, you did a 7 piece, it was a little bit of a stretch, an 8 piece was a little too hard, and you're pretty comfortable at 6, then yeah, I would put you at a grade 6 RCM level. And then if you can play at a grade 6 level, but you like have never learned how to read notes, I'd bump you down quite a bit, at least for a little while. So based on all this information, you can see if any of the pieces that you've learned are in the RCM syllabus, which you can find for free online, to figure out what the grade levels are and where your pieces fit in with them. And if the pieces that you know aren't in the syllabus, just pick a grade and have a look at some of the music from that grade. Try even learning a few pieces from that grade and see how it feels. And that'll start to give you a sense of what level you're at and where to go. So one of the problems that I had when I was doing my grade 10 exam is that I wasn't comfortably at a grade 10 level. I was probably comfortable at like a grade 8 or 9 level. And what that meant is that all of my grade 10 level pieces were stretch pieces. I found them all very difficult. I could learn them within a few months. Like they stretched me, but they weren't impossible. So I wasn't jumping so far. But because they stretched me all out of my comfort zone, like every single one of them, I was much shakier in my performance than I would have been if like I was kind of feeling like more natural at a grade 10 level. So I would have been able to do a grade 8 or 9 exam much more comfortably than the 10, just because all of my 10 songs were such stretches. And just for a little more RCM exam info, like even if you're not a piano player, there are 21 instruments that you can take exams with. And you can also take pedagogy exams, which certify you for teaching, like personal teaching. I think there's actually a separate institution that allows you to teach via schools, but that's not something I've ever done. Once you get to a grade 6 level in piano, there are also theory exams that you need to do. So say you do your playing exam for grade 6, you don't actually get your certificate for grade 6 until you do the corresponding theory exam for it, which in this case is elementary rudiments. So this is what the theory requirements look like for each level up to grade 10. And then there's also theory for ARCT and beyond as well. But this is what most people need to know. So these are just basic theory exams. I guess advanced rudiments isn't basic, but compared to harmony, it is a little bit. And then once you get to grade 9 and 10, you start doing history. So there's 2 separate writing exams that you have to do in addition to your playing exam. And just as a little kind of like cheater's tip, if you are interested, say you're working on your grade 6 music and you're a teenager or an adult and you don't want to do 3 rudiments exams, you actually don't have to. You can just go straight to advanced rudiments, and because advanced rudiments combines elements of all 3. So you can just do this one, advanced rudiments, and then you have it. So you only have to write 1 test instead of 3. And if I'm teaching kids, I'll usually get them to do it 1 by 1 because it's too tough otherwise. But if you're an adult, like go for it. That's what I did, and it worked very well. But you cannot do the same thing with history and harmony. You actually have to do those ones. So when are exams held? The exact specific days that exams are held change from year to year, but they're always around the same time. So you have 3 main sessions. You have the winter session, the spring session, and the summer session. And then you also kind of have this April session, but that's not for theory. That would only be for playing exams. So 3 to 4, and it kind of depends on what region you are, will affect what sessions that you can do exams in. Most cities will have all of them. So the winter theory exams are always in December with the playing exams in January. and April is obviously in April. The spring session, again, kind of works the same way as the winter session. You do your theory in May and you do your playing exam in June. This is a really popular session because it corresponds with the school year nicely. And then the summer session, everything is in August. So if you're doing some cramming or you have some time in the summer, I've done that as well. RCM exams are not cheap. So if you are at, just jumping ahead past all the theory here, that's still not there. There we are. So if you're at a grade 1 level, you can expect to pay $100 for your exam, and it jumps up pretty substantially by the time you get to grade 10. The entirety of a grade 10 exam is $400. And these exams are much more, they're longer exams. They involve more expertise from the adjudicator and so on. So that's part of the reason the price really hikes up. I mean, think of it though, like in the scheme of things, it's a really useful investment, and it is a small sum if you compare it to, like, say, university. But it is something that I think you should be aware of if you are interested in doing exams, so you know what to expect. I'll leave links in the associated blog post of this video so you can see if there's an examination center near you. But there are examination centers in all of the provinces, in like all of the major and even some of the minor cities. So if you're Canadian, that's good news for you. And then if you are American, there's also a list of like all the different, sorry, I was going to call them provinces, all the different states and cities within that you can do exams in. So how does the RCM compare to the ABRSM in terms of levels? I think one thing with the RCM is they just have more of everything. There's more grades. I'm pretty sure that ABRSM doesn't have a preparatory grade, but the RCM does. And within those grades, there's much more music to choose from, so just more. We will talk about the ABRSM and other music schools in future videos, but this just gives you a sense of how they're similar and how they're different. So the grades are organized just a little differently. Like, for example, grade 10 RCM is pretty equivalent to grade 8 ABRSM. And then the next level, ARCT, is pretty equivalent to the ABRSM's next level, which is the diploma ABRSM. From a grade by grade standpoint, they're pretty similar too. Like RCM 9 and 10 is more difficult than ABRSM 8, in my opinion, because you have to learn more pieces and you have to learn more technique. So I think, in a way, like holding a grade 10 RCM is slightly more of an achievement than a grade 8 ABRSM. But there are still like more levels beyond DIP ABRSM, so I mean they kind of balance out in the end. So how long does it take to go through each grade? Well, the general rule of thumb for this is that each grade represents about a year of steady practice. The standard trajectory for children, depending on how young they start in their abilities, is as follows. So they will usually spend 2 to 3 years in musical kindergarten / the preparatory levels. Again, just depending on age, ability, how much they work, and so on. And then they'll spend a year in grade 1, a year in grade 2, and then so on and so forth. And that, if you have a 7 or an 8-year-old who starts, even a 6-year-old who starts like this, then they'll at least have their grade 8 by the time they're done high school. So I try to keep that in mind. So how long do the grades take if you're an adult? Well, I tend to speed this up for adults because adults generally have better coordination and can learn a little bit faster. So an adult who practices consistently, but like not like 3 hours a day or anything, they could expect a path that goes something like this. So about 1 year in musical kindergarten and 6 months in grade 1, 6 months in grade 2. I kind of accelerate this a little bit, but once we get to grade 3, I like to hit the brakes and spend about a year per grade. Give and take, like again, it's not prescriptive. Some people are going to move faster, some are going to move slower. And I generally try to keep it regimented for kids and more flexible for adults. So, I mean, again, this timeline isn't going to make sense for everyone, but it is what I keep in the back of my mind when I'm teaching and planning lessons. And that is all for today's video. If you have like any other questions related to the RCM that I haven't talked about, let me know. If there's enough interest, I can eventually do a part 2, but I'm probably going to look to some of the music schools for the next, like the other music schools for the next videos. But I do like keep these things for future reference. So if you have any other ideas, please let me know. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, please, if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it if you want to. And if you want to like hang out further, you can go check us out on Patreon, on social media, and all that. Thanks for everyone who helps make these videos possible, and I will catch you in the next one. Tsunami, tsunami, sitting in a light.